time to bring a little light here. What's this? Oh, it's only protector. I'll just fiddle around that thing. There we go. Well, that was a lot of information in a long period of time. Let's see, I think perhaps first, the best way would have you make your comments on it.
Okay, all right.
To get you organized.
First thing that you would notice is that the picture, because it's a picture on evolution, is portraying the conflict between science and religion as having to do with the conflict in biology. What we have to recognize is it's a conflict which is all over the place. It's not just in evolution. It's in a tremendous number of areas. And why is that? Because science is an attempt to understand the physical world. As an attempt to understand the physical world, it's a process. It's changing as time goes on. Every Tuesday, the New York Times has a section on science. And every Tuesday, when you look at that section, there are new ideas, new concepts, new discoveries, and new developments. So science is not a fixed thing. We had a Ptolemaic view of the universe for several thousand years. We changed it with Copernicus in 1543 into our heliocentric system. We changed it again in the 20th century when we recognized there is no center to the universe at all. We are in the process of redoing our cosmology about every 5 years. If you take the books on astronomy, the textbooks that are used in college, they come out in edition after edition after edition. Obviously, the publishers don't want to use the same edition because then the students could just sell that one book. No, you have to get a new one. But also, you have to get a new one because the science is different. We've learned more things. You can, for instance, just ask yourself, at different points in history, how many planets did people think there are? And you probably know that around 2 years ago, we just changed the number again. And we changed the number, by the way, in terms of the work of a committee whose chair was a former faculty member from Loyola College, a guy called Solomon. So before that committee met, there were 9 planets. After the whole process was finished and it went to the plenary session, there were 8 planets. So you have to change all the textbooks. And in a few years, maybe there'll be a different number. Right, so science is something which is in the process of changing. It's not completed, it's not done, it's not a final statement. But the same thing is true of theology and religion. Religion, an attempt to understand the ways of God with man. All right, fine. But as time goes on, that changes too. I mean, for instance, just consider what we've learned about ancient languages. I mean, before the Rosetta Stone, we didn't really even know that there were languages like ancient Assyrian, ancient Akkadian, and languages like that, which were the culture in terms of which the ancient patriarchs in the Old Testament grew up and the way in which they worked out their original thinking. We didn't know anything about that. But now, starting in about 1800, we did. And then imagine just a few years ago, what was it, 1947, we discovered almost a whole library in the Near East of books going back to the time of Jesus of Nazareth. Actual books that were written in the days when he walked on the surface of the earth. Before that, the earliest books that we had, earliest copies of the Bible, had been several hundred years, 300, 400 in this era. So that means that theology is changing also. There's new data and new evidence coming in all the time, and our understanding gets to be stronger. Now, it's not that what went before is denied, it's that it's seen better, it's seen in a richer, in a fuller, in a more total sense. Okay. So both science and theology are like countries. Countries that are growing, countries that are developing. But they're countries within the same universe. And so as they grow and develop, there can be a time when they're going to touch each other. There's going to be times when the two have a border which is common. But then you're going to have the question is, where is the border? Where is the border between science and religion? We've met this in human history. Just a few years ago, China and India went to war over where the border is between China and India. It's somewhere up in the Himalayan mountains, and nobody really knows exactly where it is. People don't live up there, except for the big monster who lives up there, comic books. But nobody else does. So where is the border? And so they had a war. And those wars, border disputes are constant in human history. Where is the border between Israel and Palestine? Good heavens. Good luck on that one. We're just fighting all the time on it. So when you hit a border conflict, you have then two choices. You can say, all right, we're going to fight. We're going to have a war. All right, so there's going to be a conflict. Or you can say, let's be smart and have a conference and sit down and talk and discuss it and try to work out some kind of a solution as reasonable human beings looking at data and trying to understand that data. So it's not just that there are difficulties in understanding evolution and the interpretation of the Bible. There are difficulties all over the place. Look, for instance, at modern molecular biology itself right now. So there are a lot of scientists who want to do embryonic stem cell research. And they say that is simply good science, because with that science, we may be able to cure Parkinson's or something like that. And there are other people who say, no, wait a sec, embryonic stem cell research is taking a human life and destroying it. You can't take a human life and destroy it as a scientific experiment. That's not what science is. If you once do that, you get into the situation that Adolf Hitler was in back during the Second World War. You remember, he had a situation where his pilots were attacking England. When they attacked England, the British were fighting back, and now then an airplane, a German airplane, would be hurt in the battle, and the pilot would have to ditch in the North Sea. North Sea's cold. It's cold. And so Hitler had to know how long a pilot could survive in that water. Because if it were only a few minutes, he would have to go out fast to rescue them, almost something like with a helicopter. A little longer, he could come out with a P-2 boat. A little longer, he could come out with a submarine. It was a good scientific question. He needed to know how long could a person survive in the temperature of the North Sea, so he could know how to save his pilots. Right. So he did an obvious scientific experiment. He took a big tank and put the temperature of the tank down to that of the North Sea, and threw people into it and timed how long it took for them to die. Perfectly good scientific experiment, isn't it? I mean, he wants to find out how long can people live in cold water, so put people in cold water and see how long it takes. Is there something wrong with that? Is that a scientific question? Or is that a human moral question? Is that a question that's solved by writing a differential equation? Or is it a question that is solved by thinking about the meaning of things? So science has the aspect that it has to do with facts. It has to do with facts as those facts are known. Religion has to do with something that has to do with ought. So if you're a physicist and you're going to study the law of falling bodies, so you're going to take falling bodies. So you're going to take an object and drop it. You notice the language that you use. You're going to drop it and you're going to see how fast it falls. How fast it falls. But there's a word you don't use there. You don't say how fast it ought to fall. How fast it is required for. There's no oughtness in science. The science is a description of reality. It's a description. It doesn't tell you what ought to be, it tells you what is. But with human beings, we have to work out what ought to be. That is a very human question to us. Can you try every experiment that you can think up?